I'm running out to get dog food.
Okay, we are live.
State of Wisconsin versus Andre Campbell. 20 CF 3188. Appearances, please.
Sarah Hill appears for the state.
And Andre Campbell does appear in person via Zoom with attorney Vincent Guillemot from the Public Defender's Office, also via Zoom.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Is everyone amenable to conducting this hearing via Zoom?
Yes, the state
Yes.
is.
All right, Dr. Collins proffered a report as to competency. We had a return on that report. Mr. Campbell does not agree with the report, and we have set it for a competency hearing. Everybody good to go?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, Attorney Hill.
Yes, good afternoon. Is Dr. Collins is there?
She's here.
Okay, great. Good afternoon, Dr. Collins. Can I ask you briefly, can you tell us?
Let's
Excuse me, do we
swear
have to
her in.
swear her in?
I assume you're calling her as your first witness?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Judge. Yes, I called Dr. Collins, Dr. Deborah Collins.
All right.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you give in this matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God, or under the pain and penalty of perjury?
I do.
Thank you. Can you please state your name for the record?
Deborah Collins.
Yes, good afternoon, Dr. Collins. Can you describe for us what is the nature briefly of your educational background as it relates to your employment as a forensic psychologist?
And just for the record, I would stipulate to Dr. Collins's qualifications in this case.
Okay,
All right,
thank you.
very good. Then we can bypass all of that. Thank you.
Wonderful. Dr. Collins, can you tell me, did you have opportunity to conduct a competency evaluation on an individual by the name of Andre T. Campbell?
Yes.
And Dr. Collins, can you tell me briefly what were the nature of the procedures that you undertook in order to learn the information you needed regarding Mr. Campbell to make a determination as to whether he's presently competent to assist in his own defense?
On October 5th of this year, I met with Mr. Campbell in the Milwaukee County Jail in a non-contact professional visiting booth, and there I interviewed him. In addition to that contact, I reviewed the criminal complaint. I've reviewed the defendant's medical records with the Milwaukee County Criminal Justice Facility or the jail. Additionally, the day following my contact with the defendant, I also spoke briefly by telephone with defense counsel about his observations of his client.
Thank you. And can you tell me, Dr. Collins, I'm going to ask you first, based on the investigation you undertook, the interviews with the defendant, speaking with his counsel, reviewing the information, can you tell me, did you reach a conclusion as to whether you believe to a reasonable degree of medical or professional certainty, whether the defendant is competent to proceed to trial at this point in time?
Yes.
And what was the, I'm sorry, what was the conclusion you reached?
My opinion, to a reasonable degree of professional certainty, that Mr. Campbell, due to symptoms of his untreated mental illness, is presently substantially lacking in his mental capacity to understand the proceedings or to aid in his defense, and that he is not competent to proceed in this case at this time.
And can you tell me, Dr. Collins, what specific information that you gathered from the interview with Mr. Campbell and the other sources of information, what specific information did you base this conclusion on?
One of the most salient or relevant pieces of information were the bizarre comments that Mr. Campbell made about in response to the allegation or in response to his legal predicament. What he told me is that despite at one point saying he believed that 25 years was his potential exposure in this case, at other times and on multiple occasions, he told me he believed that he would be set free from custody and that he would be vindicated in the underlying charge, with no display of rational appreciation of potential prosecutorial evidence to the contrary. Moreover, he also despite coherent comments he would make, he also made comments about the maximum potential liability to which he may be exposed in this case, which raises serious concerns at this time regarding his present capacity to appreciate rationally, factually and rationally, the range and nature of potential penalties he may face if convicted in this case, an outcome he believes is entirely impossible.
Okay, and you said additionally that did you diagnose him, or did you conclude that he had been previously diagnosed with some type of mental disorder?
I diagnosed him with a mental disorder. The best information I had, which was minimal, were those observations of Mr. Campbell following his receipt into the jail after his arrest in this case. And at least the clinical observations there raised concerns, because at one point he reported he was hearing voices, though he later said that he was not. At another, he was staring blankly. He was also placed on suicide precautions. Those were some of the observations, but again, those were quite minimal. Mr. Campbell himself is of the belief he has no mental health problems, at least as of the date of my contact with him.
You also indicated, I think, in your report in reference to him endorsing hearing voices and having a history of panic attacks and paranoia, you indicated that he was observed with, quote, a poverty of speech. What does that mean specifically?
That means that he essentially wasn't speaking, or if he was, it was minimal in response to presumably efforts to engage him in some discussion.
And Dr. Collins, do you believe to a reasonable degree of professional certainty that if Mr. Campbell received certain treatments and interventions to assist, that he would be capable of becoming competent within the statutory period?
Yes.
And briefly, what do you base that conclusion on?
I base that conclusion on the fact that Mr. Campbell is not currently receiving psychiatric treatment, and that the condition, a psychotic disorder from which his deficits arise as a defendant, is essentially fundamentally a treatable condition, and that the medications with which he would presumably be treated at a state mental health institute would address the problems or the barriers to his competency at this time.
Thank you. Thank you, Doctor. I don't have any further questions.
Cross-exam.
Thank you. Now, Dr. Collins, when you reviewed his medical records, it was fairly limited as to kind of mental health treatment in the past before his arrest on this case. Is that correct?
Yes.
Essentially, I think in your report, it looks like it kind of only outlines a March, 2 days in March of 2009, where he was at BHD.
That's the only record I could obtain. I know of no other history of mental health treatment by him that there are records for available at this time.
And in your interview with Mr. Campbell, now he indicated that he does not believe that he is suffering from any kind of mental illness or disorder at this time. Did he indicate that he in the past had any issues in that regard?
The only thing he disclosed was that early in his elementary school education, he had seen a psychologist and he had been prescribed a medication for, in his words, quote, problems focusing, end of quote.
And were you, in your interview, were you able to discuss with him, I know you indicated you kind of discussed his maximum exposure here, correct?
Yes.
And he was aware of what he was charged with and the maximum exposure on that charge?
Well, what he told me is that he did name the charge, or approximately thereof. And he also offered his estimation that he was facing a maximum of 25 years.
Okay. Did you also have any kind of discussion on the role of the various court officials, his attorney, the prosecutor, the judge, things like that?
I certainly asked him related questions.
Was he able to kind of give any answers, cognitive answers to those questions?
Yes and no. A couple of the fragmented answers he gave certainly suggested he retains some basic factual knowledge that you might expect of someone with his level of education about the American criminal justice system. At other times, though, his speech, as the records described, was impoverished, so that he, even with tutorials, really didn't say much in response to them when asked to demonstrate whether he understood what I had tried to teach him.
Okay. Also now in your interview, you discussed his employment history, right?
Yes,
And he was able to provide various jobs that he's worked in the past.
yes,
Now, the diagnosis that you came up with was what?
unspecified schizophrenia spectrum and other psychotic disorder. That is a formal diagnosis.
And ultimately, that was based on, as you said, the limited medical records that you had, the interview with him, and then the jail records since his arrest on this case. Is that correct?
Yes, the information that I've outlined in my report.
All right. I have no other questions.
Any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
All right, may Dr. Collins be excused?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, thank you, Doctor. Attorney Hill, any other witnesses?
No, Your Honor.
All right, Attorney Guimau, any witnesses for the defense?
No.
All right, Attorney Hill, any argument?
I don't have any argument, Your Honor.
Attorney Guimau, any argument?
The argument that we have is that Mr. Campbell stands by his statement that he does not believe he has any mental health issues. I think that his prior record is very deplete of any, past significant mental health issues. He outlined in the interview with Dr. Collins a fairly significant work history where he was able to hold down jobs. He was able to discuss at least, that there was a pretty significant maximum penalty. He might have not, had that exactly correct, but he knew that it was a significant maximum penalty. And I think he had some discussions about kind of the court personnel, the roles, and how a criminal case would proceed. So based on all of that, Mr. Campbell would like to assert that he should be found competent at this time, despite what Dr. Collins finds.
All right, thank you, everyone. And Attorney Guimau, that is a good argument under all of the circumstances here. As everybody knows, Dr. Collins is a forensic psychologist. Everybody has stipulated to her credentials. Mr. Campbell chose not to testify in this hearing and chose not to proffer any evidence for the court to consider. So what I considered was not only Dr. Collins' report, but her testimony this afternoon in this proceeding. And she talked about her conclusions. She talked about the bizarre comments that she attributed to Mr. Campbell in regard to his legal predicament, how he believed that he would be set free. And while that certainly in and of itself is not bizarre or raise, any concerns of competency, taken as a whole with everything else that he had to say, and her opinion that he did not exhibit rational understanding of the proceedings or the predicament that he was in, certainly backs up her opinion to a reasonable degree of professional certainty that he is currently not competent. She talked about him hearing voices, about a blank stare, about the fact that he believes that he has no mental health issues whatsoever, that she couldn't draw him out even during the tutorials when he did not have much to say. And she opined that while she believes he is currently not competent, she does believe that he will regain competency within the statutory timeframe. I did find her testimony compelling along with her report, which I took judicial notice of. And Mr. Campbell, then over your objection, I am finding that you are not competent to proceed currently. You are likely to regain competency. I know she had a portion of her report in regard to the medications. I also find that you are not currently in a position to understand the advantages and disadvantages of said medications. And I will order that medications also be provided as believed appropriate by the professionals. So at this point, sir, we will set this matter. I will sign orders to this effect, and we will set this, 90 days or so to see how he's doing, counselors?
That sounds good.
Yes. And I'm sorry, I might have missed, I would ask that this be, that he be ordered forthwith.
All right, I will so order that. Eileen, if you can remember to put that in the order, I will take care of that.
If the court needs me to submit a special order, I can do that as well.
March 2nd, 9 o'clock via Zoom.
Sure.
That's fine.
Okay, next court date will be March 2nd at 9 o'clock for a return on doctor's report by Zoom.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you. All right, Mr. Campbell, we'll be in touch with you shortly, okay?
Okay.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.